Investigated and cleared of all charges, this is the Daniel Natal Show. We've talked on the show about how the establishment uses a divide and conquer strategy to have us fighting each other, instead of putting up meaningful resistance to them. I've talked in the past about how when Occupy Wall Street happened in 2011, as a response to the subprime mortgage collapse in the economy, the people were becoming conscious of a class divide in America. They framed it as the 1% versus the 99%. No sooner than Occupy Wall Street gained traction in 2011 than the wealthy leveraged their control of the media to start flooding the airwaves with new terms such as white privilege, critical race theory, unconscious bias, and so forth. This was done in a bid to get us to fight each other rather than turning on them. In reality, the ruling elite, who would cause the economic hardship, were terrified of the working class. They wanted to do things to neutralize them. One of the charts that jumped out at me recently was a graph showing how the distribution of fentanyl exploded. When? Coincidentally, in 2011. Right when the race baiting campaign started. This lethal variant of heroin was flooded across the country at precisely the same time that the oligarchs decided to wage war on the working class. Things like the fentanyl crisis were contributing factors to the unprecedented rise of death and suicide across the country. In an article by the American Psychological Association, we read, Princeton University economists Ann Case, Ph.D., and Angus Deaton, Ph.D., have shown that deaths from suicide, drugs, and alcohol have risen steeply among white, middle-aged Americans since 2000. They argue these deaths of despair are linked to a deterioration of economic and social well-being among the white working class. Americans need to understand that a war is being waged against them. And it's not just fentanyl. It's other pharmaceuticals, narcotics, and alcohol, as can be seen from this article. Pain in the Nation, 2022. U.S. experienced highest ever combined rates of death due to alcohol, drugs, and suicide during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic. We can see the charts and data they've amassed from this new avenue they've been using to call the herds. And call them they are. As Dennis Barrett covers in his brilliant new book, Endgame, the transhumanists are openly calling for a massive reduction of the unwashed masses as AI gets rid of jobs, and the elites don't know what to do with the seething new mass of humanity. They're nervous, panicky, and cold-blooded. Machiavellian ideas that would have been off the table in any sane time are gaining ear in elite circles. According to former Treasury Secretary Paul Craig Roberts, the U.S. financial sector has long looted other countries. A number of participants have described the process. First, a country is enticed with bribes to the leaders to take out loans that cannot be serviced or repaid. Then in comes the IMF. Austerity is imposed on the population. Public services and employment are cut to free resources for debt service, and public assets are sold to repay the loan. Living standards fall, and U.S. corporations take over the country's economy. As foreign governments, having experienced or witnessed the economic carnage and fearing accountability, are less willing to be bribed into indebting their countries, American finance is now applying this technique to Americans. So it would seem that they're not only trying to thin the herd, but also attempting to siphon out their property and wealth. In the 1600s, John Locke wrote in two treatises of civil government, whenever the legislators endeavor to take away and destroy the property of the people, or to reduce them to slavery under arbitrary power, they put themselves into a state of war with the people, who are thereupon absolved from any farther obedience. Has the government started to wage war upon the people? Is their goal to ensure the posterity and preserve the population, or has the machine of state been changed to systematically attack its own citizens? I ask this question with only too clear a sense of the answer. Just remember John Locke, once the government begins to wage war on the people, you are no longer under any obligation to obey them. It is not incumbent on you to participate in your own destruction, and no ethical person would ever suggest to you that you are. If you've gotten this far, you must like our content. If you haven't already, head to thenewamerican.com and subscribe to our print magazine, published twice a month in print and daily online. It's the essential news source for freedom-loving Americans.